G'day, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of DNA Reviews as we look at the latest episode of The Mandalorian, which is particularly exciting. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up before I do anything regarding Mr. Aaron is the name of the episode, Guns for Hire. And of course, when I thought of that, I thought, mate, is someone like hiring out Aaron's biceps or something?
Well, you wouldn't get very much for those. I hope everyone's out of their chocolate comas from Easter, and it's good to see everyone here tonight. It's going to be an interesting discussion, isn't it, Dags?
It will be indeed. And as always, there are spoilers for those who have not seen the episode as yet or don't want to be spoiled. Remembering, of course, that our job in this particular series is to sort of look at the shows, the episodes, the good parts and the parts that maybe could have been done differently and done a bit better. And of course, to see what other people thought of it as well. So, of course, we encourage people who are watching live to post their thoughts and views on this episode because it has sort of divided the fan base a little bit, putting it simply. And we'll have to see as we go along as to what worked and what didn't. So, there's a lot to cover off, actually. So, first things first, we start off in space. And we end up with this ship. And I've got to say, I mean, I actually thought it was a really interesting design. To me, it looked like an old-fashioned ray gun, just with wings on the side. I thought that was particularly cool. And, of course, when we get inside, it's a quarren ship. And I thought this was a really good sequence. You got the captain in the tube because they obviously they're aquatic species, eating the fish as it went along. And I actually thought this, to start off with, was actually kind of groovy. So did it work for you?
Yeah, I thought actually the ship looked like a one-eyed Mon Calamari sort of head almost. It didn't surprise me when they went inside. It was like an aquatic race, that's for sure.
Yeah, so I thought it was interesting. First things first, like an Imperial ship turns up and the crew say, oh, yeah, it's an Imperial ship. They can't fight it. And there's already a reference to Imperial warlords. Now, we've seen that reference a few times before in the past. And, of course, obviously the thing is you just pay them off. So it would imply that the whatever Imperials are around, they're short of funds. They need money, right? So they're Imperial warlords running around. You're sort of like your proxy Gideons of the world. And people pay the money and they just fly away and do their thing. And I thought that was a very interesting sort of thing because whenever you hear the word Imperial, you think it's big, it's gigantic, they've got large fleets. And obviously, in this case, they don't. And I like the fact that, and for those who didn't pick up on it, when the captain says, oh, yeah, basic isn't their, like, effectively their first language. And of course, you kind of forget that basic is English. So they don't call it English in the Star Wars universe. It's called basic. So for those who didn't put two and two together, but I thought this was quite good. So she sits there, she's eating the fish. She's like, okay, we got to deal with the warlord. It's all, well, in this case, what she thinks is a warlord. And it's not. And Mandalorian buddies have come back from way back when. Kosk Reeves and Axe Wolves, he's now got a name because previously he never had a name. And I don't know if you picked up on this, but these guys wear their jetpacks all the time. Now, he's sitting down, leaning against it in the chair. And I thought, geez, that's got to be damn uncomfortable because you remember the jetpacks are supposed to have rockets on the side and all that sort of thing. So that would be a damn nuisance. What do you reckon?
Yeah, and it would be annoying just from the weight of carrying it around as well. I didn't notice that they wore them all the time. Christy has said she was confused why only one of them was in the water tube. I think that's just because that was the captain, so it was a privilege thing.
Could be, actually. I did think it was a nice way to start because these are aquatic races. You don't sort of see them in the water. I thought that kind of worked. So we've got the Kosk Reeves has come back. That's the lady, and Axe Wolves, as I said. So they're obviously have reappeared from way back when, and we know that they were associated with Bo-Katan. They've since left her because she lost the Darksabre. So it was good that they returned the way that they did. And it was looking good. The sequence, everything was really come together quite well until this happened. The whole Romeo and Juliet aquatic version. And I thought, holy moly, where are we going with this?
Well, I was thinking in Revenge of the Sith, we had Squid Lake, and now we've got like Romeo and Juliet in the Star Wars universe as well. I did think it was a bit sappy.
The one thing I picked up on, and other people did too, is the voices were completely normally human. Now, if you look at the Mon Calamari guy, we've had two major Mon Calamari characters in the past. You had Admiral Akbar and General Radis, and they always had really interesting voices. But both of these guys had normal, just human voices, and I thought that was really disappointing. It just didn't work at all, seeing this perfect English coming out of their mouths. So, yeah, it was a bit surprising. And of course, it's assumed. Sorry, go on. You're going to say something?
One of the one of the Mandalorians should have yelled out to him, "Don't marry her. It's a trap."
And it's been assumed that this Mon Calamari dude was actually referenced in Chapter 3 as a bounty that went walkies, apparently jumped bail and whatever else. So they've somebody's put two dots together and hope that actually is meant to be the same character, whatever. And of course, there's a couple of comments. I'm going to get back to them. And this part I did look at and go, oh, you're killing me. They share a tender hand in Flipper. Dude, where was this going?
I do like one of the comments from Natasha is, that was awful. And she is an official voiceover artist as well, so she would know.
Yes, exactly right. So at the very least, it was dodgy. It didn't make sense as to the whole love thing. And, the young Monkel's got the infatuation with the captain, and she just says, nah, sorry, son, off to the fish market with you. Oh, yeah. What was the deal with that?
Yeah,
unbelievable. LGBT fish squid. Yeah, you can wonder. It's like that's a real cross species thing if ever there was one. DJ said way back here with the Mandalorians, yeah, they've got live ordnance on their back. Well, I suppose they're ready for action. But when you see them at the end of the episode, when they're just on the planet, just hanging around throwing baseballs at each other, they've still got their backpacks on. So then maybe it's their version of never taking your helmet off. Don't take your backpack off. Dear. Very good. And can we consider for a moment how love works across? Well, some people. Oh, no, I'm going to stop right there before I get myself into trouble. But yes, it's love the fishy way. What can I say? There's a lot of bad jokes.
If you cut the quarren open, are they full of, the fish eggs that you eat, the caviar? Are they a delicacy on some planets? If you boil a mon calamari, is it like eating a really big lobster? I think more food way of thinking.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad jokes that can come out of this particular sequence, and we're just not going to touch them because all of them are going to get us bans and strikes. So there you go. All right, so our Mandalorian guys have come along, and they've all Mickey whooped off, right? Which is all good. Got their their Moncal guy and buggered off. So we go back to good old Bo and Din and all those puppies, right? And we head up on a brand new planet called Plazar 15, right? And I did find it funny that with all these beautiful surrounds, I mean, like, why are they living in a dome? It's just a rhetorical question. I don't expect there to be an answer. I thought that was kind of cool. And, of course, I could not work this out. Bo has been given the job by the Armourer to go out and find out all these Mandalorians and reunite them all, right? So why is Din, Grogu, and even R5-D4, why are they with her? What's the go with that?
They're just along for the ride. I think it's one of those things where we've seen this season the focus of the story shift from Din Djarin to Bo, and so you can't just have her going off by herself. So they really are just along for the ride, I think.
Yeah, and this bit here when she looks at Grogu and he goes, and I was like, oh, even my other half when she watches had a real like, oh, he's so cute. It was a cute moment, and of course that's intentional as to why they've done that. Yeah, DJ said sets the tone for the episode. Weird and kind of all over the place. Well, this particular episode is a bit of a good one for that. And Natasha said from Spankin', I don't know where they're going with the show, but I'm beginning to lose interest, which we will discuss a bit further on as we get into it. So for whatever reason, Din and Grogu and R5-D4 have all come along for Bo's quest, which makes no sense whatsoever. They should have stayed at home with the Armourer, but they're with it no matter what. Now, this is the bit that I found interesting. As is mentioned there, they've seen the Mandalorian guys in the distance. Axe Wolves. I think it's supposed to say wolves, but it's woves. I think it is. We see the ship in the distance, and I thought if we could just land right now, get to the core part of the story, get his group to mix up with Bo's group, it would have been awesome. But instead, we've got to take a sharp left, and it's literally a left because that's where the dome is. And we're about to go on a side quest, which is actually the only way to fill in time for this entire episode. And I think for a lot of people, and I know you've thought this too, after this moment, it all went a bit pear-shaped, yeah?
Yeah, I think anyone who's followed the show, and indeed any of the shows we do, the most important thing I think with the show is the writing and the narrative. And I really hate when it wanders all over the place and doesn't add to the story and doesn't move the story forward. And this is a perfect example of, you can even see where you could cut and then cut to where it goes back to the story, and everything in between, like 45 minutes, just you don't need.
Yeah. And I think that's where the episode went a bit off skew, but we'll still go through it anyway. I mean, so we're not going to just hang it on the whole thing. We're still going to go through it in detail as we do, because there are some parts where she's quite good. But it was a bit of a jarring moment, that's for sure. There's nothing about that. Regarding, yes, Christy said, yeah, as you can see, use the cash cow because Grogu's got to get, and he does a lot of cool stuff in this episode. Oh, I can just hear the cash registers ringing already, and I've got some great ideas for action figures for Grogu, which I'll discuss a bit later on. And you are right. There are systems that can automatically take over your ship, including the Windows startup thing. Ding, ling, 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 ling. It's like, yeah, okay, we've never seen that before. We've seen tractor beams, but not, complete system takeovers. I thought, oh, okay, fair enough. So even that's, you know what it is, that's the system. That's the writer saying, no, we're going to take over your ship no matter what because we need it to land so we can go on the side quest to fill out the episode.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It would have
Yes,
been
exactly
much
right.
better.
And you are
It would
right.
have been,
It does feel like a video game plot. That's what it is.
yeah.
That's video game quests. I mean, Mandalorian, the series, has been like that since almost like day one. So it just must be another Tuesday or a Tormsday. What do you reckon?
Yeah, it would have been much better doing a what they usually do, have like a couple of cloud cars escort them in or something like that, and them going, well, we could blast our way out, but we want to do this civilly, so we'll do it. It really weakens the. I mean, if it was like a transport or some freighter, it'd be understandable. But you know, you've got like the leader of the Mandalorians or one of them, and the ship can just be taken over like that. I mean,
Yes.
that's a really big, you know, fault in the technology, I think.
Yeah, need a firewall upgrade, that's for sure. Anyway, so we land on the planet, right? Let's just deal with the episode as we've got it, right? And we'll discuss at the end thoughts and views on the whole thing, right? Love this one, right? They walk out of the ship, there are droids there. You know, Death Star, Imperial droids. Oh my God, they're still, because they've got black, right? Because they're colored black, mate, that just gives it away completely. So they've got to be like bad guys. So, which I thought was kind of interesting. They didn't even think to repaint them, they just left them as their original color, which I thought was kind of interesting. And of course, they've got to get in the train and do the whole thing with the identification, the chain code. And I thought there's a lot of information there for good old Din. I mean, instead of just like height, weight, birth, and blood type, mate, his whole biography must be on this damn thing. So, what do you reckon?
Well, as I said earlier, when they were in the train, obviously they filmed all the scenes in the train together. So it's anyone who's seen this, there's the start, which starts off in the train, and they end back up in the train later. I would have just like forgotten everything in the middle. For me, it was just a waste of an episode. There were some pretty sets and some nice looking droids and stuff that I think we're going to cover. This was just frustrating. And do you know what's more frustrating? It's getting to the end of the season. So we know there's only a couple of episodes left. This might have been forgivable at the start of the season, but when I don't even know where this series is going and I want them to have more story and a thrust to what's going to happen, this was just, I didn't want to see this episode.
Yeah, a few people have said that being so close to the end is like, oh no, we've got no time for fillers. And as Chrissy said, yeah, look, side quests in this show are a bit notorious. I mean, if you remember even the first season, he's got to get from Grogu from here to there, and in the process, he's just zigzagging all over the place, like nothing's ever straightforward. But it's the nature of the show. Let us play on. Now, I've got to admit, right, the visuals, and I know it's a blurry picture because the train's moving so quickly, is stunning in this. I mean, you can't knock them. They look outstandingly good, and it was really, really impressive. But I thought it's a dome city with a lot of stuff in it. And the first thing I thought of, even though it's not 100% accurate, is Logan's Run, right, from 1975 or whatever it was, which is also a domed city. And you go, okay, that's fine. I can sort of see the links, and if you look in there, you got the Logan's Run. You can see the train tubes and all the rest. And I thought that's kind of cool. But then what accentuated the Logan's Run connection was the hedonistic lifestyle that everybody's got. Everybody's just living their life of fun and pleasure and all this sort of thing. And Logan's Run is exactly like that with the people. So I thought that was, I don't know if it's intentional or it's just something I sort of connected, but I don't think anybody else has picked up on it. But, and aside from a lot of color, we ended up with this sequence, which kind of worked for some and didn't work for others.
Sorry. Well, the other thing that I thought it reminded me of Logan's Run, I wish all the characters had died by the time they were 18.
So you needed time to renew, is that right?
Yeah.
So you get into the world, and as we said, it's all everybody's loving life as it is. There's parallels to all these different shows, and of course, as I picked up, there's very strong Alice in Wonderland vibes. This sequence is a bit later on in the show, but the principle's still the same. So I'm not entirely sure where they were going with this, but that's what it's all about. This is what we got, and I thought this is important. Okay, everybody, just pay attention to this. No wonder the crowd is stunned by what's going on, because you wouldn't believe it. In the show, they stole our friggin' line, the banther in the room. Dude, what's the deal with that?
I know. It's one of those things we foreshadowed this a good 2 or 3 years ago, didn't we? But okay, I admit someone else might be as smart as me and Dags, but I didn't see it coming.
I was shocked actually when I saw that, and I go, it's the first thing that the bombardier says. Oh well, let's address the elephant. The banther in the room, and I go, hang on, that's from our show. It's like you friggin' tea leaf. What's the go with that?
The other thing, when I first saw this episode, I thought it was a kid's party to begin with. I didn't even realize they were adult aliens. I thought, oh, they've turned up at a kid's party or something, but it wasn't. So it was a little bit, it was just, unlike Logan's Run, they got into the dome and it was like inside the Epcot Center, and it's all Disney. This is the most Disney episode I think there's been, with fantastic creatures that are more Disneyland than Star Wars universe.
Yeah, it was definitely aimed at the kids' audience. I'm not entirely sure why they did that. Yeah, I guess we'll get through it a bit further on. I don't want to read all this out. There's a lot there about Jack Black. And, of course, Jack Black, of course, plays the Bombardier and Lizzo plays the Duchess. And it's an interesting one. So at face value, you can either take it or not take it. It is what it is. But I thought, okay, let's look at it from the actual character of the character. Not Lizzo, not the Duchess so much on the left, but Bombardier. What a stupid name, Bombardier. I mean, seriously, is a post-imperial sort of dude. And I thought, because of the way he's acting, now I don't know, I'm just reading too much of this. Even I know this, but you can sort of work with it to a degree. It's almost like he was a post-imperial guy. He went through all the rehabilitation thing on Coruscant. What happens if he was had a bit of an attitude problem, and they stuck him in the Mind Flayer? And because we never saw what happened to Pershing after he went through that, they cranked, when Elia Kane cranked it up to Spinal Tap 11. Maybe it happened to him, and he's turned out to be the ultimate good guy. He's like, I'm just the happiest guy in the entire universe. So I don't think that's the case. But if you wanted to read into it, you probably could. And he's actually been through that system, and it's screwed his mind up to the point where he's just happy camper all the time. So I don't know. Make of that what you want.
There was a lot of issues with this for me. Jack Black used to be cool, and I don't remember the point where he tipped over to being annoying, but that's what's happened for me. And DJ's right. No more stunt casting. I think they should get actors that are right for the roles, not stunt casting where you see them go, oh my goodness, it's whoever, because generally that takes away from the drama of the episode. Now, this episode wasn't one that had much drama anyway, and I guess it is unfair to say just because you're a good actor you can't be in Star Wars, but if it distracts you from the actual story, I think it's a bad thing. And everyone's been talking about they were the ones that were in it, and it's a bad episode. So it definitely has had an impact where that's what people are talking about. Really, they should be looking at the best actors for the role, not the most popular actors for the role.
Yeah, so even DJ's made a point about saying about the Jack Black thing. So it didn't work for him, and it didn't work for a lot of people. That much I do know. Yeah. And as Chrissy said, yeah, they're giving larger size people more costume ideas, which is good. There's nothing wrong with that. So be curious to see if anybody goes down that path and actually makes these things. And I agree with you, Chrissy. Hang on, I'm going to cut you off. I'll get to it in a sec. And I agree with you, Chrissy. We actually have people who watch the replays of these episodes on YouTube. I have no idea who they are. Wouldn't it be funny if one of them was a Disney/Lucasfilm person? Go, that's an awesome idea. Let's go with the Bantha in the room. These guys will never know that we've stolen it from them. So you never know. Sorry, dude, cut you off.
The thing I haven't liked about this series is the costumes, where they've gone over the top again. And you've got the Duchess's costume, which the back part of it is now all CG. Yeah. And I thought, why bother doing that? I mean, it's okay. It looks alien, but it's going one step too far for me.
No, that is fair enough too. There was something else I was going to add in and I forgot what it was. But anyway, we shall move along. All right, so this is for you. This is important, right? Because I know you're a dude who collects action figures and you're a bit of a Star Wars guy and whatever else, right? This will be out next week, right? A brand new action figure coming soon. It's the Duchess with Grogu with the optional fish feeding as an additional. That's a variant if ever there was one. What was it?
No. I'm so freaking sick of Grogu at this point. I'd take him down to juice and put him in one of those juices and see what like Yoda's race tastes like, because it just is getting to the point where it used to drive the story and now it stops the story for everyone to go, look how cute this guy is. We've done it. Come on, let's get on with the story.
Yeah, somebody criticised when he jumps out of Din's arms and lands in her arms and go, oh, look at that. Grogu's jumped again. Yay. Chick-ching, chick-ching. What didn't make sense, and there's a lot of people picked up on this, is that when Din and Bo go off to find the whole droid thing going on, they just leave Grogu with the Duchess and Bombardier, right? And, of course, a lot of people say, well, Bombardier was an ex-Imperial. Who's to say that in the background he's not working the shifty with Gideon or whoever else? That's a massive risk and very uncharacteristic of the character. So, clearly, they didn't want to have to lug Grogu around the entire place looking for the droid thing, right? So they just said, oh, no, you can stay there being fed fish and all that. And it's like, yeah, and you are right. They've got nothing for Grogu to do. He's
Yeah.
just being forced into the show, and I think a lot of people are now realizing that after the whole thing with Luke, he should have stayed with Luke, and I think everybody's accepted that. He got forced into this show, and they've got nothing for him to do. So make him look as cute as they can. My other half, when she watched this bit, he's being fed the fish, loved it, right? So my other half, she was the perfect embodiment of somebody who's not a fan of Star Wars, not hardcore, just watches it for the enjoyment of it and dials into Grogu big time. And even she was struggling with the rest of the episode, but she loved the Grogu bit. So clearly that's their intention. But of course, we've known that all along. So there
I
you go.
100% again agree with DJ, who just make adventures of Grogu. On Disney Plus, there is the adventures of Baby Groot and the adventures of Maggie Simpson, and they all have their own little. They can do that, and kids would love it, and people who love Grogu would love it. I was quite happy for him to leave The Mandalorian at the end of season 2 and start a different story without him.
Yeah.
For him coming back has kind of hampered the whole season for me.
True. Anyway, we've covered over that ground before. We're stuck with him, and it is what it is. But the cash cow will just keep on ringing those cash registers. Speaking of which, he's still with us, right? And I love the fact that I must admit, even I found it funny when she starts patting his head and he starts purring, but whatever. So they made a point. They got battle droids, good old Clone Wars separatist battle droids in the city. They've been rehabilitated. It's like, hey, you just reprogram the damn things. It's not that hard. If you just rip the memory out, stick a new one in, it can't be that difficult. And I like the technicality that stops them from bringing in the Mandalorian guys from outside into the city because they've got weapons, right? But our guys here, our heroes here with weapons can still go in and do what they've got to do. I reckon the writers were scratching their heads going, all right, we need a reason as to why Axe Woos and his troops don't come in to fix this issue, why they can't do that. And, of course, the argument would be, well, just take the weapons off them and get them to come in and then find the I was weird.
I just thought that was crap, lazy writing, honestly. I thought that makes no sense at all. They're hiring bounty hunters, but they can't hire them to do this. That's just silly.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I like this. You had me at battle droids. I thought, oh Jesus. Oh, God. Yes.
Yeah. I think I don't know what it is. I think the whole writing this season has taken a step down, unfortunately.
That was kind of cringeable. So there you go. All right, so we've got a battle droid problem. They're all malfunctioning, right? So they run downstairs. And who should they run across? But good old Christopher Lloyd, who's looking a lot older than he used to. The character's name is Hellgate, right? And I thought, well, that's a damn dodgy name if ever there was one. And as we discover at the end of the day, he's the one who's intentionally sabotaging the droids, right? I've just got to this point straight away. He's loyal to Dooku because he was a separatist, yada, yada, yada. And he doesn't like the society that he's in because they are living a hedonistic lifestyle. And he wants to sort of take all the droids out and get people to sort of learn to live by themselves, which is a pretty weird way of justifying it, because I thought, hang on, if you're in charge of security, you're making all the money, you would be making money. You yourself would be benefiting from the fact that droids are doing menial jobs. Why would you sort of sabotage that? So I reckon they had to invent a reason for him to be a bad guy, and it kind of didn't work. But
whatever. It would have been. I'm not a writer. I can think of better things. The Imperials want to test this, and this is a test control thing in a small enclosed area to see how it goes. Like the whole thing with him going, I wanted to do this because Count Dooku was the visionary. Oh, I've let your family down. Oh, they're going to banish me on the moon. I was like, you've got to be freaking kidding. Anyway, I'm jumping ahead. I didn't like this episode at all.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. I did like the fact, and I did pick up on this. So he makes this discuss this at the end of the episode, that people have become so reliant on droids doing menial tasks, they can't switch them off because their society would crash, right? And I thought, okay, let's look at this in another way. And I see it as a subtle reference to our modern day society, where we have become so internet and technologically dependent that if you take that technology away, everything falls apart. And once again, I'm probably drawing lines where there are no lines to be drawn. But the principle is exactly the same. And because if this society is so used to this technology being there and they take it away, it was like they got no idea what to do. They don't know how to survive. I mean, we see in some of the CCTV footage that they're making food and they're delivering parcels and whatever. And to a large degree, our society is very, very similar, where if you took the technology away today, I mean, one, we'd be off the air, which is a travesty in itself. But a lot of people wouldn't be able to survive and they would just crumble. And I think if you wanted to look at it from that perspective, I kind of get it. So, yeah. And there may come a time, you never know, with all the whole automated delivery systems that we've got, maybe 20 years from now, will become so reliant on that stuff that we'll be in their situation. I don't know. What do you reckon?
The thing is, I think stories have become top heavy because it is good if you can comment on society and what's happening at that current time in the story. Star Trek did it a lot. You know, the original Star Trek series always had a moral to it. But what's become top heavy now, a lot of the time, I think they come up with a moralistic story to educate the audience and then build the story around that rather than thinking up a good story. And then if something with some education fits, you know, you can put it in as well. So I think we're getting too much of this. You're in the entertainment industry, entertain us. You're not in the education industry. Give us your opinions on things. I think that's one of the things, not just in Star Wars, in a lot of shows that started happening.
Yeah, well, DJ's on your side. He thinks I'm thinking there's way more depth than it has, and I tend to agree. I just saw it. And I thought maybe because remember last week we're discussing about things that happened. What was it last week? Whatever episode it was, where they're emulating the Ukrainian war with Russia and all. I thought, oh, you can draw parallels, but you are right. Maybe it doesn't work, but each their own. So where are we? Felt some serious Blade Runner vibes during the chase at the end. We'll get to that Blade Runner stuff in the end. There's an absolute ball terror coming up regarding that. And there's a whole lot of other stuff that they've ripped off from other movies. But in the interim, so this is the way it's been given the flick. We're going to see some Ugnaughts, and then now it's I have spoken. So once again, that's become the catchphrase of the day, and it is actually for today. It was good to go down to the lower depths and see these dudes doing what they do, which is fixing robots and all the rest of it. I thought that was a good little bit.
I love how there is different catchphrases for stuff, and as we were talking about yesterday on the celebration, how it's all going to end together in one movie. Do you think they'll do a scene where you have, this is the way, I have spoken, one way out, live long and prosper? Like they'll get all the different catchphrases in the one scene or something.
Yeah, and of course, once we get to the Mandalorian guys at the end, they don't say this is the way, which I think is kind of cool, but we'll get to that point in a sec.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it's exactly right. It's like darn kids and their internets. Exactly. I love it. So, robots. All right, we're sort of working it out. We're going for the whole detective story here, which is all very, very good. We get to our battle droids, the B1s on the left and the B2s on the right. I got to admit, I thought it's good they used the same voice, even though I always much preferred the voices from the Phantom Menace. They sounded a lot more serious, a lot more really, really interesting. Once they went to the really silly, high-pitched voices, which was primarily through the Clone Wars series, kind of irked me a bit. But anyway, but you can see from Din's point of view, he should be kind of freaking out because he's really, really an anti-droid sort of dude, and there are droids everywhere. But and he had some bad experiences with the battle droids during the Clone Wars. So yeah, I thought I like it. Hang on, Daniel said, "Yeah, CSI Mandalorian." I never even thought of that. That's actually very good. Yes, exactly right. A new series that they've come up with. Love it.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what Who song is left for them to use as the introduction, but I did think he was behaving out of character in this scene. Would he really have just started pushing droids around?
I don't know. It didn't make sense. And I did like the fact that it's always number 3, the third one. It's like he starts kicking him and bashing him. Even the B1 says, I wouldn't do that if I was you. Anyway, it turns out he does find one that's a bit not right, and it decides to, instead of bash the shit out of him, just to do the bolt. And we end it with a massive chase scene. And I got to admit, is this the first time we've ever seen Din run at full speed, like absolute full pelt? I don't think so. Normally he just walks everywhere. If you remember season 1, series 1, he was just walking continually, right? And this is at absolute full speed, and I'm willing to bet that's not Pedro Pascal in that suit. But he was really bolting along.
Yeah, no, I didn't even think about that. I can't really remember. There must have been a time, but I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Yeah. Anyway, it was good to see him hit the turbochargers, which is kind of cool. Tasha said that from Spankin', like the last episode was written by someone who knows nothing about Star Wars. It's a fair point.
Well, I think you mentioned this to me, and I mentioned this to you. I've had a couple of people say to me this week, this was more like an episode of bad Doctor Who than Star Wars, and I did kind of understand where they were coming from.
Yeah, we'll get to that a bit later on, actually, speaking of which. And I agree with you. Din would be going through some PTSD with seeing the B2 super battle droids. So instead of just kicking them, you reckon he'd be like kind of almost hiding in the corner. A lot of things. The problem with that would be that the audience watching that who wouldn't have put 2 and 2 together wouldn't work out why he's being so hesitant. They'd be going, what is he afraid of? But he should be. He should be having like real flashbacks of really, really bad times as a kid. But they've clearly just bypassed all that. He's just going to start kicking them to find out which one is the bad one. So, yes, exactly right. He was looking for a fight, wanted an excuse to start shooting. Well, yeah, obviously when he said you had me at battle droids, that's clearly the case.
Yeah.
Don't believe for a moment that he could outrun that droid. I agree. You would think that droids are way faster. Of course, they have much more stamina. They just keep running and running and running. And of course, realistically, the B2 doesn't have to run. He can just turn around and take him face on. So,
well, I was watching that, and when the battle droids turned up in the arena in the Clone Wars, if they'd started using those moves, the Jedi would have been in even more trouble than they were. They kind of just walk very slowly in unison and get cut down. But when you see them jumping around and moving like this, you're like, you do understand why they're super battle droids.
True. I like this from DJ. It kind of feels like an early TNG plot. That's Star Trek: The Next Generation. Kind of ironic considering Star Trek Picard this week was on next to this episode was outstandingly good. So yeah, it's definitely 1 for Star Trek and 0 for Star Wars for this week at least. So yes, exactly right. So yes, very good. Now I don't know if you noticed this, right? The droid rushes past this Mod Squad Vespers. How good's this? Now they actually do fit in this city. They didn't fit on bloody Tatooine or Mos Espa, which is Tatooine, but they fit here. And I thought, good on them. This is where they belong. Did you notice that?
Yeah, there were a couple more on the street as well. They weren't as colourful as the one in the Book of Boba Fett, but they were definitely part of the way people on the city got around.
And also, funnily enough, not as many mirrors either. I think you need 1 million mirrors on Mos Espa, but here only 1 or 2 just does the job. So. Very, very good. Now, we did say that this episode and the series as a whole has been stealing bits off other movies and TV shows for quite a while. We've listed a whole army of them. We mentioned about Batman and Jurassic World and bloody Flash Gordon and whatever. Earlier we mentioned Logan's Run. I don't know if anybody picked up on this. I picked up on a strike like immediately as soon as I saw it. I don't know if anybody else has.
The Farrah Fawcett
the digital
scene?
crimes. What?
The Farrah Fawcett scene? Sorry, no. What were you going to say?
You cut me off I'm in the middle of my flow, dude. They stole this scene straight out of iRobot. So the digital crime scene tape. And I thought straight away to go, oh, God, they've swiped that from there. So this is from the USR robotics sequence in iRobot. Exactly the same. I was like, oh, guys, seriously, the original. What do you reckon?
So I do wonder, it was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, who's actually done some of the better episodes of The Mandalorian. I do wonder if this overall season they have been cramming as many references to other movies as possible, because there's stuff in all of them. There was, I don't know, it'll come up, there is another reference to Logan's Run, and it's, the beauty parlor where Farrah Fawcett gets all cut up by lasers.
Yeah, anyway, I was reading comments. Whatever you said, I like the sound of it. So, anyway, let's move on. So, all good stuff.
No problem.
I like it. Yeah, iRobot wasn't a classic film, mate. I loved it. But as soon as I saw that, I knew straight away where they'd stolen that reference from. And it looks identical. They didn't raise the height or anything. They kept it exactly the same. But anyway, so we've caught the B2. All right, now he's knocked him out. It's almost like references to Attack of the Clones. Now, this part I loved, right? We're going the whole classic detective trope thing, right? So they've found... it would be in a classic movie, the matchbook with the name of the place where they hang out, right?
Yeah.
Including the address. How lucky is that, dude?
Would a droid really have that?
I loved it. I thought it was awesome. I was like, oh, apparently he hangs out at the Resistor bar thing, and we've even got the address. Let's go. Oh, dude, what's the deal with that?
I've heard the Resistor bar is one of those robosexual bars. I wouldn't go hanging out there.
Oh dear. Well, yeah, we're going to get to the bar in a second, right? But look, let's focus. There are some positives. We're focusing on the story, which has clearly got some issues, but there are some things that worked really well. I love the image of this. I mean, it was clearly shades of Attack of the Clones with the Outlander bar, if you remember that. And that's a pretty stunning image, and I've got to give them credit for that. So it did look good. There's no denying that. So, yes.
Yeah, I thought, no matter what with Star Wars now, the visuals are always pretty stunning. There aren't many where you look at them and go, oh, that was dodgy.
Now, a good question has come up. Good Lord, why do droids have bars? And I got to admit, I cannot work this one out for myself. So it not only is it a bar, but it's a human-style bar. They've got tables and they've got music playing. And it's a cute concept, but it doesn't work. It's dumb. And I was looking at, are they trying to humanize the droids to say, well, these guys, when they're on their downtime, they go and hang out at a social place to just chill out. They wouldn't do that. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It looks good, and I think it's, once again, it's done for the children watching the show. It's like, oh, my God, this is where the droids hang out. The Resistor, how good's this? Right, there's even a guy, the bartender. None of that would have even been there. So, and, of course, it's the classic moment, the classic trope of the old Western, when the outsiders walk in, everybody stops. All they needed was a piano player, and they all stop, and the guys playing poker, they all stop and look at the guys coming in. And it's like, all right, it's cute, but it makes no sense whatsoever. So, yeah.
It is one of those things where you don't ever see droids consuming anything. You know, they'd get refueled or whatever, and power down in their downtime. But you do see C-3PO sort of going, thank the maker, and having an oil bath as well. So there is that level to droids where they do get personal satisfaction out of some things.
True, but this is looking at it from a social perspective. Now, one thing, droids probably wouldn't have downtime. They'd be working 24 hours a day. That's why you have them, because they're machines. It's like actual robots. But you're thinking, okay, we're going to switch you off now. They go, I'm just going down to the resistor bar. I'll be back by 11. Don't wait up for me. What the hell, dude?
Well, I thought it was interesting how they completely sidestepped the issue of, hey, maybe they're treated like slaves, by the droid going, well, humans have such a long life. They create us. We're happy to do stuff for them.
So I'm going to draw parallels once again, DJ probably won't agree with this. What they're looking at, and this is, you can apply real world to this. There's a few comments. I've got to get to all these comments. There's some grass ones there. Real world scenarios of the past, which would be, using American terminology, where you would have, areas of white Caucasian people and areas of African American people. And of course, the African Americans would all be together, everybody segregated. But as soon as white people walk in to intimidate everybody, everything just stops. And I think it's meant to parallel and echo that, because clearly the droids see the humans as a threat and they could be replaced. We're going to cover that off in a second. And I think that was intentional, right? Everybody stops. Everybody's afraid, because even when Din says, don't anybody leave, they all freeze. That's what I think they were trying to sort of put in place. Whether it works or not, I don't know. All right, where are we? So Christy said it's an early detective noir vibes. Absolutely. There's no, all you needed was for Din to wear a Sam Spade hat. I reckon that'd be the way to go. Where are we? It's good. Why is a climate control dome on a pristine planet? Yeah, we mentioned that earlier. I don't know why, but it does look very, very cool, and we're going to discuss later on in a tick. The droids, yes, they are from everywhere, right? In fact, there's even one that popped up, and I thought, well, I didn't know about that one. So they're all over the place. Rex from Star Tours, yep, they all pop up everywhere. It's Easter egg central, which is pretty cool. And all right, so I do like the line, and when Din says, I don't think they get many of our kind here, that was very cute. A nice little hark back to good old A New Hope. And in terms of droids, did anybody pick up on this? Someone thinks this has been inspired by Bollocks, which came, of course, from the Han Solo novels of the 1980s. Now, I know you're pretty dialed into those sort of books. Did you pick up on that at all?
No, I didn't see it. So I did you pick that up? That's a good one if it is, because that's
I mean, it's not 100% correct, but it's not far from it. There are some parts like that. The neck part is the same, and this part over here is the same. The eyes are roughly the same. The bit on the nose is roughly the same. It's not exactly the same, but it certainly looks pretty good. So yeah.
I did pick the droid. I mean, there was stuff from Star Wars and stuff from all over the place. I did like the sort of metallized blue 3PO unit. That I was like, that'll make a good figure. So even with this, I'm like going, oh, that one and that one. I hope they make action figures out of that.
Yeah. Ads has said the bar. Yeah, it's clearly meant to be the cantina of A New Hope reversed, right? So we don't serve your kind here. Droids are going to have to wait outside. Now it's a bar, nothing but droids. So logically, if aliens walked in, they say, no, we don't serve aliens here. Yeah, clearly that's what the intention was. So I like this from DJ. When the vacuum cleaner isn't doing its job, it lives in the cupboard. Oh dear. Yes, they're trying to give the droids a bit too much personality. But I thought, why would they be playing music? There was actually music in the bar. Oh god, it was good fun. So
yeah.
There you go. I reckon you're right. That's bollocks. Yeah, well, there you go. A deep cut. Oh, that's a new word term for today. Very cool. All right, so we end up with what looks like the Daft Punk bartender. And he's made a point of saying that the droids are concerned they're going to be replaced by humans. They will not be replaced by humans. And in fact, he says specifically humans, not organics, which I thought was interesting, because they use organics everywhere else. Because clearly humans, organics, we'll say humans, don't want to do menial tasks, especially on this planet, right? So if the droids all of a sudden got shut down, it's not like all the peasants, all the people who just live in this party lifestyle are going to go, well, I'll go and clean the dunnies and I'll go and walk the dogs and deliver the parcel. Of course, they're not going to do that. And no one's going to do that. That's a massive downgrade. At the very least, they'd have to import people to do it. So the machines aren't going to get replaced. It's just not going to happen. So that was definitely an empty threat. So, yeah.
I did think the bartender looked like Daft Punk, but also crossed with the stars from Black Hole. there was some really interesting imagery going in there as well.
I like that one. Very, very good. Oh, that's a good question. If droids are a slave race, how do they afford going to a bar? Yeah, well, that's exactly right. That's a very good point. So, I don't know. So, make of that what you will. So, anyway, it is what it is. You know, all the droids are there. It looked good. Silly, stupid, but you know what the hell? The Resistor bar. So the first person who wants to copyright that name and open up their own bar, called Resistor, knock yourself out. What can I say? All power to you. Very, very good. All right. So I don't know if you knew this. Nepenthe, right? This special droid lubricant. You can make of that what you will in the program drink. And it's actually a real thing. It's actually has its roots in the real world. Homer's The Odyssey, which I read about today. So fancy that. So make of that what you will. But anyway, you got nanobots in there striving. The droids are going completely troppo. And of course, you know, as we discovered earlier, Hellgate is the one doing it all. So
yeah,
whatever.
Whatever.
Whatever. Exactly right. We got a droid morgue. I don't know why you got a cold slab droid morgue. I thought that was kind of cool. And including the white mind probes of the spray. They spray painted him white. Why couldn't they spray paint the two black droids out the front white? So, because he's the good guy now. I thought that was kind of cool. And it was interesting when the mind probe droid decided to go lose its load and go completely spazzo with the laser beams. And of course, we needed to be reminded that Din does still have the Darksabre.
That was the scene I was talking to you about. That was the Farrah Fawcett scene from Logan's Run, where she's in the cosmetics thing and then the laser thing goes.
Yeah. Yep.
Goes nuts. And I was like, oh, they are definitely doing Logan's Run this episode.
Yep. No, I totally agree with you. So anyway, the mind probe is not half the droid it used to be. Boom tish. And but I thought that's why they had this bit. Yeah, now I realise what you're saying. They missed an opportunity to have a Cylon or Vincent for Black Hole in the bar. Yeah, exactly right. Well, I did find it interesting when we're in the train earlier and we look at Bo and she does the pushback when it takes off. I go, oh, she'd be used to that being in Vipers in Battlestar Galactica. Yes. But you are right. They could have gone hell for leather and just chucked in all these robots from all over the place and gone completely to town. So, but clearly they didn't. So it would have been good for the fans. They would have gone nuts over that. Droid booze. Yes, exactly right. The Nepenthe. Ooh, they could just get on it. It's like, remember, fans, there's always time for lubrication, especially if you're a droid.
Or if you're out to work, you can always get Nepenthe light as well.
and low fat as well, because you don't want your droids to start walking out. Classic. Wouldn't that be funny? Are you going the full 100% Nepenthe, and he has a bit of a swig and unbelievable. All right. We made references to Blade Runner earlier. This was an absolute ripper. They've ripped this up like absolute rip-off big time as you picked up on it. It's not fish. It's snake scale. This is straight out of Blade Runner when they look into the detail of something and they read off and they go, oh, this is actually where it came from. I thought, hey. Lack of original ideas, dude. What do you reckon?
I know. Like I said, I don't think it is lack of original ideas. I think they really have this season decided to load it full of all these Easter eggs. I just think some of them are so almost identical scene shots, like you were saying with the iRobot, and we've had the alien laser scans and stuff like that going onto the derelict ship. I wonder why they're doing it. It's not obscure enough to be clever. It's like, we've done this, and you're just like, okay, why?
I don't know. It's unusual. Anyway, it's got to work. Let's go through that detective thing. We're playing through this pretty fast because clearly they've got to wrap it up in one episode. And in the end, no one really cares anyway what the hell's going on. That's the funny thing. It's not like we'll look back upon this 3 years later. God, you remember everything that was going on? And I've forgotten the name is the planet, Glavis, whatever it's called, Flavus. And it's like, mate, wasn't that all really, really cool? Clearly not. There you go. At what point do homages become rip-offs? Well, a homage is meant to be similar to something, not identical to something. And you go, oh, I can see the parallel to it, but they've put their own spin on it. Whereas a lot of this is just direct rip-offs. And it's not just one or two. Throughout this entire season, there's just been stacks, as we've pointed out. So it's almost become a bit of a joke. Don't worry about the Easter eggs. Funnily enough, we just finished Easter. It's spot the rip-off. So, but anyway, whatever. Good stuff. All right, so I love this one, right? Plazia, that's the name of the planet. The key to Plazia, which is actually shaped like... Where do you see keys in the Star Wars universe, dude?
That looks more like the keys to the Emerald City on Oz than something from Star Wars, I've got to tell you.
Oh, geez, I tell you.
Do you know what the end of that is?
Funny. Yeah, at the very least, it needed to look like a device you stick into the doors. You know, I don't think we've even seen keys in the Star Wars. I can't remember. Like it would be like shaped like a card, right? Or electronic thing, but not a physical key. Even though they said it's symbolic, but I thought, Imagine Bo gets and go, what the freaking hell is this meant to be the shape of?
Well, the end of it looks like the Dial of Destiny from the new Indiana Jones trailer.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. Now, DJ said, remember, like Star Wars does use a lot of stuff from the previous movies and TV show. That's a known fact. It wasn't 100% original, right? And I think a lot of people said, it's okay. It kind of works. But we're seeing things here that are a little bit too close to the bone. And the fact we're picking out on it may not be a bad thing, but we're seeing it all the time. And it's almost like, well, we know that the writers must be aware of it, and they must be aware that the audience knows about it. So is it a good thing or a bad thing? Could they have done it differently? I don't know.
I think when you have a scene where you've got Leia laying down on the Death Star and it's a homage to Kurosawa, that's great.
Yeah.
Or like there's TIE fighters coming out of the sunset like Apocalypse Now, that's great. But when you do a whole scene that isn't a nod to something off, it's like, let's recreate the scene in this episode just because we can. It's stupid.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, does it make the thing worse? Probably not. But I can see from both angles, and you are right. Maybe it's like, well, yeah, as you said, the original Star Wars did it. Why can't we do it here? Of course, you can do it. Whether you should do it, that's the question you've got to ask. Speaking of things that you should or shouldn't do, figure this one out. So Grogu gets a knighthood for not doing anything at all, and they actually use a medieval sword on him. What? Oh, dude,
this was another one of those things where I thought she was going to prick his ear and like cut his ear or something when she knighted him and go, oh, sorry. And then you see after they wanted his blood for the Imperials or something like that. At least that's something to do with the story. No, he's just been knighted for helping her cheat at space croquet.
But she didn't know he was helping her. That was the thing. I think she's just chucking the bug, and he's just helping it through, and she's not even aware of it. So she just said, well, I've fed you with all these fish. I've scratched your head. Now I'll give you a knighthood, and we're all cooking on.
Yeah, exactly. I know this isn't meant to be a logical universe. In a Alice in Wonderland, when they use hedgehogs as the balls that roll up, that's a very cartoon Disney thing. Why would they be using a living creature as a ball in this game? It makes no sense at all.
Love it. I agree with Christy. It was clearly a cute moment. You've got to have the cash cow because once again, he hasn't done anything in this episode, and he got knighted. And of course, as he's getting carried away by Dinny waves and all that, even my other half Lynn just goes, "Oh, it's so cute," and it is cute. It's very, very clever. But they must be scratching. Well, what are we going to do with the guy? We've got to do something. He's got to appear. He can't just have close-ups of him reacting to things. He's got to do something. So, yes, and I agree with Tash. Yeah, it was definitely the cherry on the ridiculous cake. Oh, I wouldn't mind a slice of that if you don't mind bias.
I'm pretty sure one of the things, I don't know if you picked it up, in the background there were Yuzums walking around, which was the long-legged Ewoks that they eventually changed. You saw them sort of in the park in the background walking around. So there was some other Star Wars stuff happening there, but not enough to save the episode.
True. Now, Daniel said, "Did you notice the guards wearing Stormtrooper armor?" I did notice it, and I thought, why would you have guards in a place that is all peaceful? It doesn't make a great deal of sense. If you're using the Logan's Run methodology, they had the Sandman, but their Sandmen were just designed to track down runners. They weren't just standing guard over everything. So I found it interesting there should be guards there. I mean, clearly everybody's there for a happy time, and it's great and wonderful. Maybe they're there because they are aware that there could be a droid threat. Okay, work with that. But they've got the big spears and that. Oh, it seemed unusual that they should be there, but they did look good. I won't deny that. So,
do you know why? It's because everyone who's been in the Mind Flayer and become peaceful is just waiting for the intergalactic broadcast of Grand Admiral Thrawn to say, execute Order 67, and instantly become evil again, you know.
Love it. I like this one. Yeah, Peter would have a field day for crustaceans abuse. Yes, exactly right. Very good. So that was that. And I agree with DJ. Yeah, the side quest is over. Back to the actual plot right after all. What?
Can I just say something? The side quests are good if they're done well. In the episode with Cara Dune where they go and fight the ATST, that's a good side quest because the episode's good. When they do the getting the armor back and have to do the side quest with the crate dragon, that's a fantastic episode, but it actually drives the plot along as well. This one is like, why bother? I really thought this one was a bad episode.
Yeah, look, you make a good point. In the end, your heroes have to learn something. If they learn something, it serves a point, but nothing happened here. And it was just a long-winded route to get to where we wanted to go. Daniel said about the guards, ceremonial guards, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say. They did look good, but it was just unusual to see them there. Maybe that's what it is. But anyway, so even the Royal Palace has guards, and they don't actually need to do anything. So, yeah, what the hell? But they did look good. All right, and there's a lot of colour in that sequence. I tell you what, it's like Flash Gordon. Like, oh, your eyes are popping out of your head. All right, done. All right, so we're over the rubbishy stuff. Get back to the real story, right? Now, I found this was interesting. I don't know if you picked up on this, but I did, right? The irony of this entire image is that the Children of the Watch, which the armourer hangs out with, they have no ships, and they even said they've got no ships, but they always wear their helmets. Get to these guys, and they've got nothing but ships, but they don't wear their helmets. Now, the question you would ask yourself, and I'd ask the audience right now, based on what you've seen in the entire series, which way would you prefer? Would you prefer to be part of the Children of the Watch, i.e. the creed that Din follows, or these guys, where they don't even wear their helmets half the time? What would you do, dude? Which one would you prefer?
Well, I can just tell you, when I sniff the inside of my hat at the end of the day, I would not want to be in a Mandalorian helmet and never take the damn thing off. Of course, you'd want to be able to take your helmet off and have spaceships and things like that. It's no question for me.
It's funny, isn't it? Because everybody keeps to say, this is the way, this is the way. You get to these guys, and that is not the way at all. Their ways, and in fact, if anything, you leave the backpack on all the time. But I thought it was an interesting contrast because a lot of people have been dialed into the whole creed thing for so long now. They go, oh, this is just grouse. This is awesome. Come to these guys. You go, no, these are the cool guys. And what shows that is that from the questionable Children of the Watch Wiggles color schemes that we saw, and we've pointed that out in this episode, in our reviews before, how some of the colors are shit house. You get to these guys, and these look like a proper fighting force. They've actually got proper decent colors on their outfits. And I reckon with the helmets on, all geared up, they would look like a kick-ass force. And that alone is a big selling point. What do you think?
Well, the other thing, I thought they were a professional bunch of Mandalorians. At the beginning of the episode where they actually confronted the bounty they were bringing back, they weren't going in firing and stuff. They're actually really reasonable. And if you look at the crew and how they treated each other, you would actually not mind being part of that crew. They kind of had a joke about it. You said, hey, this is what we're here for. They didn't go in. And I just thought this is, a very professional setup compared to the Children of the Watch that are, like you said, all different colors, fighting on the beach with sticks and stuff. And you're like, what? Like getting eaten by giant fish and turtles and birds. I was just like, I don't know what they're going to merge the two, obviously, I guess.
You could almost take a guess and say, well, if Axe's group went against the Armorer's group, that kicked the living shit out of the Armorer's group. So by a long way. Helmets on, okay, get all your whispering birds and all the weapons go completely to town. It would be a one-sided contest. You might have Paz with his big-ass BFG, get all painless, but the rest would get wiped. They almost got knocked out by all these aliens.
The Armorer with a hammer.
The Armorer with a hammer. But these guys, if you're going to follow a Mandalorian faction, these guys are the ones to follow. And I like that. So they look good and they present themselves well. And they don't have any friggin' foulings with ridiculously dumb toy Boba Fett helmets on their heads.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we finally get to a meaty bit. Bo and Axe have a bit of a bash up, and it was a good sequence. There's a lot of stuff going on. They bring out all the toys and the flamethrowers and the bloody wire things and this and that. And in the end, and of course, Bo had to win. We obviously saw that coming. But I thought it was quite good. The only thing I've not been able to work out is that why Axe was in charge of the group and not Cosca. I never worked that one out because when we first met them in season 2, right, you had Cosca on one side and you had Axe on the other side. It could have been either one, and I'm not entirely sure why Axe ended up being the one leading this group, not Cosca. Obviously, somewhere as a writer, they've said, oh, no, make it the dude, not the girl. They just maybe they flip the coin. Who knows? So, yeah.
And then the thing happens, which I absolutely called would happen, where they said, and I said, it's like Harry Potter with Dumbledore's wand. They're going to say, oh, he disarmed it and he got it off of him, so it actually does belong to this person. And then it actually happened like that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? The absolute technicality, a lot of people were not happy with this. At the very least, they wanted Bo and Din to bash it out. And instead, he could have done this ages ago. Even once he got out of the mines, out of the living waters, he could have said, you know what, you saved my life, here's the Darksabre, you're good to go. But he waits until this point after the fight. What if Bo had been killed by Axe or seriously injured? And then he says, oh, by the way, she's actually in charge. Here's the Darksabre. So, and as someone pointed out, because Din had the Darksabre, the alien in the mech suit took it off him. That meant for a short period of time, that alien was actually the ruler of all of Mandalore.
Yeah.
Dear.
It
So,
is.
but
It
yeah,
is like.
it was a massive cop out that he just says hands it. And of course, as someone else mentioned, it's all at face value. There's no proof whatsoever. He just said, "Oh well, I was in the mine. This is what happened. I got captured. I dropped the saber was taken off me. She took it up, killed the dude, and no one's questioning." They go, "Oh, okay, and away they went."
It is. It is one of those things. I was waiting for the cheesy writing where she says to him, "Why didn't you give it to me earlier?" And he says, "Because you weren't ready," or something like that. But
Yeah,
I
he had
did
to.
think it's all a bit predictable.
It was a bit of a rush job, and it's a shame because they could, if they hadn't have done the side quest thing, they could have spent the entire episode working out how to deal with this issue. If it had been, well, okay, Bo and Din do need to fight. Now, clearly, as we've seen, she doesn't need to kill him because she doesn't kill Axe; he just concedes defeat, right? So it's not a fight to the death, and I think a lot of people would have dialed into it because Bo and Din have created this relationship, and then all of a sudden
Yeah,
they got to bash it out together. And maybe it would be fascinating if she just turned on him just like that and said, "You know what? I need the troops. I need the Darksabre. Let's just have at it." And he's not prepared for it. And she just beats the shit out of him. So, for whatever reason, I think it's because the writers have realized, well, the fans, as in the children watching the show, have said, well, Bo
yeah.
and Din are a bit of a couple now. We can't, it's like a domestic argument, domestic abuse. They can't do that. So let's have her fight Axe, even though it's for nothing. So that's how I see
I'd
it.
rather have seen that than Doc Brown's nanobots. That's for sure.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you as well. Yes. What does it say? The Elder Wand from Harry Potter works because it's magic. This is a bit silly. Yeah, it was just a little contrived. He just hands it over, and it's like she's good to go. And there we are. She's got a Darksaber. All she needs now is the Mythosaur and wacko. So now I've got to bring up a quote about this episode. Now I've read a lot of fan reviews. They weren't very positive, but this one I thought was particularly interesting as a quote. Okay, now I didn't write this. A fan wrote this. Okay, it says, "It felt like an episode of Doctor Who." I hate Doctor Who.
Yeah, I told
Oh,
you,
God, that was a
my
too good.
my wife watched it and she said that was like a bad Doctor Who episode, and then she started going, when they go down into the markets in the city and find a story with nanobots and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It was not. It had so many tropes and none of them were good. It was a
Yeah.
bad episode for me.
No, I totally agree. That's the end of my slides. Christy, can you give me your crimson yawns, please, when you have a moment? The more yawns, the worse it was. The less yawns, the better it was. DJ said, generally bad episode. Beat Bryce Dallas Howard did the best she could. Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that one. Bad script is a bad script. I agree with that too. In writer's room, and it's all getting a bit tired and a bit concerning. So I was surprised. Remember, I know I've said this multiple times. This is the flagship show, and this episode really brought it down. Some people are really dialing out of it, as mentioned earlier. From Spankin, he's dialing out. Some people now think the public are now dropping off because they're losing it. A lot of people are confused as to what's going on. The whole Grogu thing is just not going anywhere, and I think that's a problem. And I don't know. It's not looking good, and that's why we said in our review yesterday of Celebration Europe, it's almost like Mandalorian's going to be pushed aside from the new Ahsoka series when it comes out. Everybody's sort of keen on that. So,
Yeah.
I agree. They could have milked it and created some tension, and I think they needed to do that. And I think they've painted themselves into a corner, and they've said, "Oh well, the children are watching," and it's clearly aimed at a children's audience now, right? Keeping it really simple. And the last thing you go, this is a good guy, and this is a bad guy, even though we don't actually have any bad guys. So,
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, I probably gave this one a 1 out of 10.
Oi, that is a bad score. But you're probably not the only one. A few people, as someone has said, of all the entire Mandalorian series, this may have actually been the worst episode of the lot.
What I don't like about it is I think you and I have both been giving this series the benefit of the doubt because it's been up and down and uneven, but there's been some good parts in it. But now it's making me feel like I've been wasting my time when they pull an episode like this. So I really don't have much respect for it at all.
No, fair enough too. We're almost about to finish, and I'll get to Christie's Crimson Yawns in a second. Before we go, though, don't forget to check out the old Sci-Fi Zone socials and the YouTubes and the Instagrams. There's a lot of stuff going on regarding Sci-Fi Zone, so make sure you don't miss that. And of course, as always, for all of your Mandalorian Star Wars needs, you've got to go to Aaron's Collectibles to pick up all the stuffs. Is that right, Mr. Aaron?
Yes, we've just got a massive Doctor Who collection in today, so brought more boxes in. So that really ties into this episode of The Mandalorian.
Very good. Now, Chrissy's gone for the 5 yawns. That's 5 out of 10, which actually is a lot better than I thought it was going to be, actually. So, as she said here, dull script, but great sets and costumes. And there was. It did look very, very good. Very good. The DJ said gets points for diversity. Plenty of stuff is diverse. Before that, needs to be good. Yes, he wants Star Wars to be good. Yeah. I watched it again today, obviously, to get the pictures. I can sort of see it's like reminds me of Phantom Menace to a degree. There's some parts that worked and some parts that definitely didn't work as an overall thing. And it's kind of groanable, but someone said it's been classed as dumb fun. But whether you need dumb fun right at the end of the season is a questionable. The key thing is what it's worth. What's her name? Bo's got the Darksabre back as easy as it was, done and dusted. So now the thing is, what happens now? So they're going to go back to Mandalore. No one's on Mandalore because it's an abandoned planet unless we discover the Thrawns on the other side, which I don't think they'll show him because they're clearly saving him for Ahsoka. They can just march back to Mandalore and go, well, here we are. We've got all these busted cities. Get a shovel and start digging and rebuild the damn thing. So they've got no bad guy to fight. That's the problem. So something's going to happen in the next 2 episodes. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I know we're out of time, but the one thing I'd like to point out, and it backs up something you said, we had a customer come in to talk to us about The Mandalorian, and he said his friends at the beginning of this series were like, why is Grogu back? That finished. So Dags was saying it would be confusing to people having him come back in the Book of Boba Fett, and we've actually seen that in person now, haven't we?
Yep, exactly right. And I said that ages ago. It's like for those who've never, because the public won't have watched the Book of Boba Fett, but the public does watch The Mandalorian. And end of season 2, Grogu's gone. First episode of season 1, he's back. Season 3, he's back again. So DJ said Gideon's going to show up. Maybe he will. He's going to have a short lifespan though, because once Ahsoka comes out and Thrawn comes in the picture, Gideon will be out of the it's like exit stage left, and we'll have to see what happens. But I think there's only 2 episodes left. She can go off now and Mando go back to him and the kid by themselves. Yeah, some people have suggested that Din and Grogu need to go back off on their own adventures. It's probably too late for that now. They've got to rebuild their entire society. Wait and see. There you go. All right. Well, that's the end of it. Any final words that you want to chuck in for regarding this episode there, Mr. Aaron?
Well, we're staring down the barrel of the last 2 episodes. I guess traditionally, The Mandalorian has had really good ends to the season. I really hope they lift their game and pull off a Hail Mary for the last 2 episodes.
Yeah, exactly right. So very, very good. All right, we're going to buzz off and leave you to it. The next episode is due out in 2 days' time. We'll be back next Monday to give it the DNA once over, as per the usual. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We'll leave you all to it, and we'll see you next Monday. So in the interim, party hard and rock on.
Good night, guys.